Welcome back to the Diver Guide channel. Today we're talking about front 2.5 tuck. We're starting to get into some harder dives, and I'm super excited to bring this one to you guys. I make these videos because I wish I had something like this when I was a kid, and I know this will be helpful for you guys. So if it is, let me know in the comments below. Ask me any questions you want. And if you want to sign up for a one-on-one coaching call with me, the link is in the description. All right, with that said, let's start right here and talk about how we transition from a front double to a front 2.5. We haven't done a video on front double, but we're gonna cover it quick right here. And one of the main things you're gonna see as you move from double to 2.5 to eventually 3.5s is the efficiency that you go from the board into the tuck. What a lot of coaches will call the connection. You might hear your coach say the connection was slow or something along those lines. What they're talking about is really the timing of the arms and upper body coming down while you're simultaneously pushing with the legs as the board pushes you up as well. And with the front double tuck, for her, she's leaning out. Her hurdle is a little bit off just because she's a little bit back from the end of the board. But you see, she starts to bring her upper body down before her arms even start moving down into the tuck. And what that does is it cuts off a lot of the height that you can potentially have, and it keeps you from flipping as fast as you can as well. And you'll see that as we get to more advanced divers, that they spend a lot more time standing up straight on the board before they drive down into the tuck. Alright, so that's a quick introduction there. Let's go right into this first 2.5. Another thing you'll see throughout these videos is that sometimes the hurdles won't look very clean, and yet the person will still make the 2.5 flips. And sometimes that's just a factor of they're in a tighter tuck potentially, or they're just stronger and they can muscle it. But on this channel, we talk a lot more about mechanics and having proper form, because as you get stronger, better form will compound your ability to dive in a positive way. And that's something that using muscle can't do long term. So be patient and make sure that you're doing your hurdles properly. And that's something that we can talk about this guy right here. As he steps through, his knee doesn't really come up. He's off balance. His arms are a little bit wild and they're wide. They don't come up all the way, but he pushes strong and he throws with his arms a little bit more than he leans. And that allows him to get enough rotation to get around. He still ends up a little short there, but the big thing here is that he's pushing harder with his legs. You can see him really loading the board. His arms are actually a little bit bent, and you want straightened out arms, extended triceps on the way down into the tuck. Continuing on with that same theme of leaning out on the start, we have another person here. They have a much better hurdle. It's cleaner. They extend at the top of this press. They drop down onto the board and try and push the board down into a nice squat. But then instead of keeping their chest up and driving the hips straight up, they lean forward to get that flip going, which is definitely okay in the beginning. In order to get flip going, you can kind of cheat the system by leaning forward a little bit, because it ends up making the board push your legs harder into the flip. Now, we all know that long term, this is not what you want to do, because you're going to jump out and coaches or judges will penalize you for being too far out. The other thing that this does is makes your dive whippy. If you're leaning on the start, it's going to make it harder to control the entry because your body isn't going as much up and down. There's a lot more horizontal movement, and that makes it hard to really nail an entry, because you're going to continue to rotate as you go into the water. And that's kind of what's happening here. She whips out a little bit on the start, and you see that it takes a lot longer to get into a tuck because of how far out her upper body is compared to where her legs are coming from. But she gets in, grabs a little bit high, she gets out just in time for the water there. When you watch it in real time, as she's coming off the board, you really notice the lean. I'm going to pause it where the lean starts and watch how her body translates forward when the board presses all the way down to the bottom position. The best thing you can do here is think about keeping your butt down as if you're kind of sitting back on the board a little bit, because you need to stay on top of the board a lot longer. If you see this in your diving videos where your hips are sliding forward, it's a sign that you're trying to go into the tuck too early. Like I said, you can fix this by trying to sit more, and you can also focus on getting the arms up and watching and waiting for your arms to get all the way up to your ears and just pausing there for a split second before you throw. It might feel weird at first, but pausing and really feeling certain positions is going to help long term, even if it takes a few times to get it right. The next person, let's take a quick moment to talk about her hurdle. Everybody has a little bit of a unique style. One thing that I would recommend is thinking about how your hurdle looks compared to professional divers. You see a lot of them do a lot of the same things, whether you do a Texas two-step or a hop hurdle or just a traditional hurdle. There are some characteristics that you want to copy, and there are some things that you might be doing that are a little funky that aren't helping you. For instance, this person comes through with that straight leg kick into the two-step, and it's an extra movement that probably isn't necessary, but the hurdle, your balance and positioning on the board directly translates into your ability to flip. And that's why it's super important to have a very consistent hurdle and one that requires the least amount of energy to do well every time. So one thing that's happening here is when she's stepping through that straight leg, that ends up translating into the leg being too far behind when she swings it through for the knee drive. See how far back that leg is? This could have an effect on her ability to balance. The further away your limbs are, the harder it is to really maintain that balance point. And I think that this could be the reason that she doesn't end up jumping super high either. You see that she comes in with so much power and she's trying to drive up as much as possible, but then when she leaves the board, it's very low. Think about how this is happening in your own dives. Where are you being inefficient on the board that is translating into your ability to jump off the board or drive up into the air or begin flips? Like the first person, you'll see this with his arms being out wide and his shoulders potentially being too tight, or it makes his arm circles weaker and off time, which means he's not going to get the strongest throw that he can have. All right, so now let's move on to the throw that she has. And it fits right in line with the other people that we were talking about, where her upper body is coming down. She's at 90 degrees between the legs and upper body, but her arms are still pointing out towards, let's say, 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, when they should really be all the way down, pointing towards the water. This is where we'll start talking about 90-90 and trying to be the most efficient we can be off the start, especially for a dive where you want to flip as fast as you can. So right when she's leaving the board, she's pulling up her legs a little bit early into that tuck. You want to finish with extended legs, and you want the board to be able to push your straight legs up into the air and then go into the tuck. So she can wait a little bit longer to pull those knees in for the tuck. She grabs at a good spot and she has a pretty decent tuck there. It's just low like we were talking about, and it's a little bit slow because her arms are late on the throw. So if you're in this position, we can talk about how to fix it. You can fix it by keeping your eyes and gaze out towards the back wall, or maybe there's flags out in front of her or something to look at that keeps her head and chin up, and then throwing the arms earlier, but making it so that the arm throw is happening before the hips bend and the chest comes down. The sequence of events here is stand up, arms throw, and then snap at the hips. You have to do it in that order to get the best 90-90 position and the best speed as a result. I think you guys get the idea about leaning on the start, and that's hard to fix. Now we're going to start looking at some people that stay on the board longer and have a better position coming off the board on the way into the tuck. Like I said at the beginning of the video, there's going to be some people that look like they should flip slower than they do. This can be a factor of just their strength and their ability to flip, but it might look a little off, and people can always fix inefficiencies. But right here, a good hop into the hurdle, knee drive is a little bit low. You can keep that knee up in front a little bit more. Arm circle is good. And look at this position. His arms are pointing all the way up. His body is a little bit on the hollow side and it's leaning forward slightly. And then he starts to stand up. His chest starts coming down a little bit early, but his arms are throwing. And this is his position right here coming off the board, where his arms are still a little bit open and pointing towards 7 o'clock. His chest is still a little bit high. He hasn't snapped down at the hips quite hard enough, but his legs are very straight. The board pushes his legs up into the air, and then he connects into the tuck. Finishes his 2.5 early, but he actually kicks out a little bit too early as well, and that's why he's rushing the entry a little bit, because he's a little stuck coming out. But we don't need to talk about the pike out that much right now. I'm more concerned with the starts and how to get into a better tuck, and then we'll talk about the outs on the last couple divers. Take a look at how we've progressed throughout this entire video. We've gone from leaning out really far and being connected with the arms and upper body to slowly getting the arms to move a little bit earlier before snapping down into the tuck. And then eventually this will culminate into the ability to do front 3.5 tuck, where most of the issues that we talked about will be resolved. So take a look at how on the end of the board, he's standing up a lot taller. His arms are all the way up towards 12 o'clock, loaded, ready to throw. The arms start throwing, and then after the arms have already passed his eyes, he then starts bending down to get into 90-90. He's actually a little bit behind as well. Right here is the last frame that he's on the board. His hips are actually a little bit open and his arms are a little bit open too. Another thing that we can talk about here is his head position. As he's throwing, his eyes and head are up in a way that he's looking out across the pool. This makes it so that your body is following where you're looking. If you're looking down at the water early, that means that you're going to leave the board early, because if your head is down, that's about 8 to 10 pounds that are moving you down instead of up and out. If your eyes are looking up, your body will follow. And that's one of the easiest things you can fix by simply looking and staring at something while you leave the board. After you do the takeoff and you go into the tuck, your head will go into a neutral position. But the takeoffs, you can stare at something until you can no longer stare at it. It's something that should be a very simple fix, but sometimes is hard to implement because you're very used to putting your eyes and head in a certain position. Everybody has their habits, and this is all about breaking your bad ones and trying to put in new ones. So practice it on the drills. If you have your head down, you can practice keeping it up and looking up on front dive, and then 1.5, and then double, and then 2.5. You have to nail it on the easy dives before it translates to the hard dives. After he gets up into the tuck, he spots the water a couple times and then nails the come out. And you can see that the pike out is there. He kicks into a hollow position, sees the water, and lines up the entry from there. Kick out and then line up. Sometimes people will go straight for the entry and just try and get their hands up, but make sure that you're seeing it with your eyes as well. If you can understand the timing of your flips, you'll understand the timing on the out a lot better. Awesome. And now let's move on to the last diver, who makes front 3.5 look extremely easy. And I just want to go over a couple things here. On the takeoff, look at how his arms extend. You almost see the extension happen. You can see his arms are bent, and then he uses his triceps to extend, and then the arms start coming down. But the arms don't start moving down until they're straightened out. So they extend, and then they come down. And now he's not trying to actually flip as fast as he can. That's why his takeoff is also not hitting 90-90. He's actually quite open. And this is because he is an elite caliber diver that does not need maximum power to make front 3.5 tuck. So it comes off like a normal person would do front 1.5 basically. But he still extends all the way through straight legs as the board pushes his legs away. And then he goes into the tuck, spots the water 3 times. And then on the out, he pikes out and looks down for the water and lines up the entry. Here's another angle to look at the triceps extending on the takeoff. He comes through with bent arms, but before the arms start throwing, look at how they're straightened out and basically right by his ears. That narrow throw is part of the reason that he's able to get so much power into the flip. The other reason is that he can drive the board down really far, and he has really strong legs to extend up into the jump, making him jump super high and then flip really fast as well. All right, so that's a quick demo on front 2.5 leading into front 3.5 tuck. I hope this was helpful. I know there's a lot of things that I can touch on in these videos. I try to give you guys the most effective tips, and hopefully they work for you. If you find that these aren't working for you, let me know in the comments below, or you can even sign up for a one-on-one session where we can talk about your dives and make them better with your own videos. I can help point out where you might be going wrong and make your dives better from there. Like I said, I hope this is helpful, and I'll see you on the next one.